Boss said, clock in at 9 sharp. So I did. From the parking lot? They say revenge is a dish best served cold. In my case, it was served with a side of malicious compliance and a sprinkle of digital warfare. When my boss declared war on my work-life balance, he had no idea he was battling someone who once debugged an entire server network during a power outage. I didn't just win the battle, I decimated the entire battlefield. My name is Olivia Reed, and until 6 months ago, I was just another cog in the corporate machine at Pinnacle Dynamics. I was the kind of employee who brought homemade cookies to meetings and stayed late without complaint. The kind who helped colleagues troubleshoot their technical problems even when it wasn't my job. The kind who believed in the company's mission statement about valuing our people above all else. What a joke that turned out to be. It all started when our department got a new director, Thomas Blackwood. Even his name sounded like a villain from a second-rate corporate thriller. He strutted into our office on his first day wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, exuding the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Things are going to change around here, he announced in our first team meeting, scanning the room with cold gray eyes that lingered a second too long on each person. Pinnacle Dynamics has been underperforming, and I'm here to fix that. Starting Monday, everyone clocks in at 9 a.m. sharp, not 9:01, not 9:05, 9 sharp. A few of my colleagues exchanged nervous glances. We'd always had flexible hours as long as we got our work done. Some of us were early birds who came in at 7:30 and left earlier. Others, like me, came in around 9:30 and stayed later. The system worked. Our team had the highest productivity rates in the company. But sir, said Sophia, our project manager, our team has consistently exceeded targets with the flexible schedule. Many of us have. Did I ask for opinions? Blackwood cut her off. 9 sharp. Anyone who can't manage that simple task clearly doesn't value their position here. That was my first red flag. The second came 2 days later when he called me into his office. Ms. Reed, he said, not looking up from his computer. I've been reviewing everyone's performance metrics. I stood awkwardly in front of his desk, waiting for him to at least acknowledge me with eye contact. He didn't. Your technical skills are adequate, he finally said, in a tone that made adequate sound like an insult. But I see you've been arriving around 9:30 most days. Yes, but I stay later and... I didn't ask for excuses. Starting Monday, 9 a.m., I need reliable people on my team, not clock watchers. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Clock watchers. I'd pulled all-nighters for this company. I'd canceled dates, missed family gatherings, and worked through weekends to meet deadlines. Of course, I managed to say, will there be anything else? He finally looked up, his eyes coldly assessing. That's all for now. Close the door on your way out. I walked back to my desk in a daze. Ryan, my desk neighbor and work friend, raised an eyebrow questioningly. I just shook my head. I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. That weekend, I tried to adjust my routine. I set my alarm clock earlier, laid out my clothes, prepared my lunch the night before. I even did a test run of my commute on Sunday to see how traffic flowed at that earlier hour. Monday morning, I left my apartment at 8:15, giving myself 45 minutes for what was usually a 30-minute drive. What I hadn't counted on was the major accident on the highway that brought traffic to a standstill. By the time I pulled into the company parking lot, my dashboard clock read 9:07. My stomach dropped. 7 minutes late, on the very first day of the new policy, I rushed into the building, swiped my keycard at the security gate, and practically ran to the elevator. By the time I reached our floor and hurried to my desk, it was 9:12. Thomas Blackwood was waiting for me, arms crossed. Ms. Reed, my office, now. The entire floor went silent. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes on my back as I followed him down the corridor. 12 minutes, he said as soon as the door closed behind us. You're 12 minutes late on the very first day of a policy I made crystal clear. There was an accident on Route 16, I explained. Traffic was at a complete standstill. I left home with plenty of... Everyone deals with traffic, he interrupted. Responsible employees plan for it. I did plan for it. I left 15 minutes earlier than usual, but clearly not early enough. He sat down at his desk and opened a folder. This is a written warning for tardiness. I'm putting it in your file. I stared at him in disbelief. A written warning? For being late once because of a traffic accident? Rules are rules, Ms. Reed. If you can't follow them, perhaps Pinnacle Dynamics isn't the right fit for you. As I signed the warning, my hand trembling with anger, I realized something had fundamentally changed. Not just the rules, but my relationship with my job. I'd given 4 years of my life to this company, often prioritizing it above my own well-being. And this was how I was treated? Like a disobedient child. The next day, I left home at 7:45. I arrived at 8:30 and sat in my car for 25 minutes, waiting until exactly 8:55 before walking into the building. Blackwood nodded approvingly when he saw me at my desk at 8:59. That's more like it, Ms. Reed, he said as he passed by. See? Not so difficult after all. I smiled tightly and said nothing. That evening, I stayed until 7:30 finishing a project, even though my normal hours would have had me leaving at 6 quicks. When I finally packed up to go, Blackwood was still in his office. Leaving already? He asked as I walked past his door. I stopped. It's 7:30. He made a show of checking his watch. So it is. Well, we all have to make sacrifices if we want to get ahead. The implication was clear. Arriving at 9 wasn't enough. Now I was expected to stay late too. As I drove home in the dark, too tired to even stop for dinner, I realized this wasn't sustainable. Something had to give, and it wasn't going to be me. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. I arrived precisely at 9 not a minute earlier or later. I stayed late, often until Blackwood himself left. I watched as the same thing happened to my colleagues. Sophia was reprimanded for taking a lunch break that lasted 62 minutes instead of 60. Ryan received a coaching session about spending too much time helping colleagues with technical issues instead of focusing on his own tasks. Our once collaborative, supportive department became a pressure cooker of stress and resentment. People stopped chatting by the coffee machine. Lunch breaks were taken at desks, eyes glued to computer screens. The vibrant, creative energy that had made our team special evaporated, replaced by a grim determination to simply survive each day. But beneath my compliant exterior, I was planning, watching, waiting. I'd always been good with computers. It was why I'd been hired as an IT systems analyst in the first place. And now I was putting those skills to use in ways Pinnacle Dynamics had never intended. First, I needed to understand exactly what we were dealing with. The time clock system was digital, linked to our employee badges. Every time we swiped in or out, it recorded the time to the company's server. The data was used not just for attendance tracking, but for payroll, performance metrics, and resource allocation. One evening, after everyone else had left, I stayed behind. Blackwood had a dinner meeting, so for once, I had the floor to myself. I accessed the system logs and began to explore. What I found was interesting. The time clock didn't just record when we entered the building. It recorded every time we swiped our badges anywhere: parking garage, building entrance, floor access, even the break room and bathrooms. More importantly, I discovered that the system had an API, an application programming interface, that could be accessed remotely with the right credentials. And guess who had set up that API as part of a system upgrade last year? Yours truly. I wasn't planning anything illegal or even strictly against company policy. I was just gathering information. Knowledge is power, after all. And in this case, knowledge might be the key to reclaiming my work-life balance without sacrificing my job. The next day was Friday. I arrived at 8:45 and once again waited in my car until 8:55 before heading in. As I walked through the parking garage, I swiped my badge at the reader next to the elevator, a routine action that no one paid attention to. But this time, I was paying very close attention. I timed how long it took me to walk from the garage to my desk, exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Over the weekend, I did some coding, nothing fancy, just a simple script that would ping the company's server and check the badge swipe data. By Sunday night, I had a functional prototype, an app on my phone that would alert me when specific badges were swiped at specific locations. Monday morning, I arrived at the parking garage at 8:30. I swiped my badge at the garage elevator, then sat in my car and opened my app. At 8:55, I walked into the building and to my desk, arriving precisely at 9. Blackwood was already making his rounds, checking who was at their desk and who wasn't. He nodded approvingly when he saw me. "Right on time, Ms. Reed." "Always," I replied with a bland smile. For the next week, I followed the same pattern, refining my app each evening. I added more features, the ability to track multiple badges, to send preset messages to the server, to schedule actions for specific times. It was challenging work, but also invigorating in a way my actual job hadn't been for months. By the following Monday, I was ready for phase 2. I arrived at the parking garage at 8:45, swiped my badge at the elevator, then returned to my car. At precisely 8:59, while still sitting in my car, I opened my app and executed a simple command. To the company's server, it appeared that I had just swiped my badge at the building entrance. At 9 on the dot, another command made it seem like I'd swiped at the floor entrance. I waited 5 more minutes, then casually walked into the building for real. As expected, Blackwood was at my desk, his face flushed with anger. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "The system shows you arrived at 9, but you weren't at your desk." I feigned confusion. "I had to use the restroom as soon as I arrived. Is that a problem?" He faltered slightly. "You should have been at your desk at 9 The policy states we need to clock in at 9 sharp," I replied innocently. "It doesn't say anything about being at our desks at 9 years. Should I not use the restroom when I need to?" He glared at me, clearly frustrated but unable to argue with my logic. "Just be at your desk next time." "Of course," I said pleasantly. "I'll try to schedule my bodily functions more conveniently." A few colleagues who overheard suppressed smiles. Blackwood stalked away, and I felt a small thrill of victory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next few days, I refined my strategy. I still arrived early and sat in my car, but now I used my app to clock in at exactly 9. Then I'd give myself a leisurely 10 minutes to enjoy my coffee, check personal emails, or just breathe before actually entering the building. Blackwood was suspicious, but he couldn't prove anything. The system showed I was punctual, and if I wasn't at my desk the instant he looked for me, well, people do need bathroom breaks. Word got around. Ryan cornered me in the break room one afternoon. "How are you doing it?" he whispered. "Blackwood is going crazy trying to catch you breaking the rules, but the time logs are perfect." I shrugged. "Doing what? I'm just following the policy. Clock in at 9 sharp." He gave me a knowing look. "Right. And if someone wanted to, hypothetically, have the same perfect time logs, I shouldn't have done it. It was risky." But seeing my colleagues suffering under Blackwood's tyrannical regime had worn down my caution. "Hypothetically," I said quietly, "someone with technical skills might create an app that interacts with the badge system API. Hypothetically." Ryan's eyes widened. "Could this hypothetical app be shared?" I hesitated, then made a decision. "Meet me after work. Bring a USB drive." That evening, I gave Ryan a copy of my app and showed him how to use it. "Be careful," I warned. "Don't abuse it. Use it just enough to give yourself breathing room." He nodded solemnly. "This stays between us." But of course, it didn't. Within 2 weeks, half the department was using variants of my app. People were giving themselves realistic buffer times, 5 to 15 minutes, nothing that would raise suspicions, just enough to make their mornings less stressful. The atmosphere in the office began to change subtly. People smiled more. The collaborative spirit slowly returned. Productivity actually increased. It turns out that not being stressed about every minute of your day makes you work better. Who knew? Blackwood noticed the change but couldn't pinpoint why. He became increasingly frustrated, implementing even stricter policies. Now we had to send him an email confirming we were at our desks at 9:80. We had to log our bathroom breaks. We had daily standing meetings at 9:05 where he would visually confirm everyone's presence. For each new policy, we found a workaround. Automated emails. Buddy systems for covering during breaks. It became almost a game. How creatively could we follow his rules while subverting their intent? But games have winners and losers, and Blackwood wasn't used to losing. The first sign of trouble came when our IT security team announced a routine system audit. Ryan texted me immediately. "They're checking the server logs. What do we do?" I had anticipated this possibility. The app didn't leave obvious traces, but a thorough audit might reveal unusual patterns in the badge swipe data. I needed to cover our tracks. That night, I stayed late, legitimately late, working on a solution. By morning, I had modified the app to be even more sophisticated. It now randomized the exact seconds of the swipes, varied the pattern slightly each day, and most importantly, it erased its own footprints from the server logs. The audit came and went, nothing was found. Blackwood was furious. His next move was to install additional badge readers throughout the office, creating even more checkpoints we'd need to pass. It was a smart counter move, I had to admit. My app would need significant updates to handle all these new data points. For a few days, we were back to strict compliance while I worked on the solution. The mood in the office darkened again. People avoided Blackwood's gaze and jumped when he approached their desks. It took me 4 late nights, but I finally cracked it. The new version of the app could handle the additional readers. It created a realistic pattern of movement through the office, accounting for normal walking speeds and typical routes. We were back in business. The small acts of rebellion continued, and our collective spirit strengthened. We became a united front against Blackwood's unreasonable demands. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Wednesday. I was in a meeting with clients when my phone buzzed with multiple urgent messages. I excused myself and stepped out to find Ryan waiting in the hallway. His face pale. "They know," he whispered. "Someone talked. Its security is locking down the badge system and reviewing all the logs. They're calling it a serious security breach." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about bending rules anymore. If the company classified this as a security breach, we could all lose our jobs. I could potentially face legal consequences. "Who talked?" I asked. "Don't know. But Blackwood is on the warpath. He's calling for a department-wide meeting at 3 pros. I checked my watch. It was 1:30. I had 90 minutes to decide what to do. I returned to the client meeting, somehow maintaining my professional demeanor while my mind raced. When it ended, I went straight to my desk and began damage control. First, I sent a message to everyone I knew was using the app. "Delete it. Now. Full factory reset on your phone if possible." Then I systematically erased all evidence of the app's development from my work computer. I'd been careful to do most of the coding on my personal laptop, but there might still be traces. Finally, I accessed the server one last time to run a cleanup script that would obscure the patterns of our badge swipes. It wouldn't erase them completely, that would be too obvious. But it would make them look like random system glitches rather than deliberate actions. At 2:55, I walked into the conference room for the meeting. The tension was palpable. My colleagues avoided looking at each other, afraid of giving something away. Blackwood stood at the head of the table, flanked by someone from IT security and a woman I recognized from HR. "Thank you all for coming," Blackwood began, his voice dangerously calm. "It has come to our attention that someone, or several someones, has been tampering with our time clock system." No one moved, no one spoke. "This is not just a violation of company policy," he continued. "It's a breach of our security protocols and potentially fraud, as it affects payroll data." The HR representative stepped forward. "We're giving everyone an opportunity to come forward voluntarily. Those who do will face disciplinary action but not termination. Those who don't, and are later found to be involved, will be terminated immediately and may face legal consequences." My mind was racing. Should I confess? take responsibility and protect my colleagues. But before I could decide, Blackwood spoke again. We already have substantial evidence pointing to certain individuals. His eyes locked with mine. Ms. Reed, for instance, has extensive knowledge of our badge system, having worked on its implementation. All eyes turned to me. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Blackwood, I said evenly. I think you know exactly what I'm implying, he replied. The system logs show anomalies that someone with your expertise could create. I was about to respond when the conference room door opened. Sophia walked in, followed by a man I recognized immediately. Philip Chen, the company's chief technology officer. Sorry to interrupt, Chen said, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Blackwood frowned. Mr. Chen, we're in the middle of addressing a security breach. Yes, about that. Chen placed a folder on the table. These anomalies you're concerned about, they're part of a system stress test that I authorized. The room went completely silent. I struggled to keep my face impassive. A stress test? Blackwood repeated. Yes, Chen confirmed. After the last system upgrade, we needed to ensure the badge readers could handle variable usage patterns. Ms. Reed and a few others have been helping simulate different scenarios. Blackwood's face flushed. I wasn't informed of any test. It was on a need-to-know basis. Chen replied smoothly. Announcing it would have defeated the purpose of testing real-world usage patterns. I caught Sophia's eye across the room. She gave me the smallest of nods. I suddenly understood what was happening. Sophia had gone to Chen. They'd worked together for years before Blackwood arrived and had somehow convinced him to cover for us. Well, Blackwood said stiffly, that still doesn't explain why people haven't been at their desk at 9. Despite the badge system showing they've arrived. Chen raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware that employees are required to be chained to their desk the moment they arrive. Is that a new company policy I missed? The HR representative cleared her throat. There's no official policy requiring employees to be at their desk immediately upon arrival, Mr. Blackwood. The time clock system is for recording presence in the building, not at specific desks. Blackwood looked like he might explode. But I made it very clear. Your department has the highest productivity metrics in the company this quarter. Chen interrupted. Whatever you're doing seems to be working, even with these flexible interpretations of arrival times. And just like that, the tables had turned. Blackwood couldn't argue with the results, and he certainly couldn't contradict the CTO. The meeting ended shortly after, with Chen suggesting a review of departmental policies to ensure they align with company culture. As we filed out, Sophia fell into step beside me. Nice save, I murmured. Chen has been looking for ways to rein Blackwood in, she whispered back. Apparently, we're not the only department having issues with his management style. When I explained what was happening, Chen was more than happy to intervene. I felt a wave of relief, followed by concern. But the app... Delete it, she advised. We've made our point, and I think things might change around here soon. She was right. The very next day, an email went out to the entire company announcing a return to flexible working hours, with an emphasis on results rather than time spent at desks. Blackwood was conspicuously silent for the rest of the week. The following Monday, another announcement. Thomas Blackwood would be pursuing other opportunities. His replacement, Sophia. As for me, I received an interesting email from Philip Chen, asking if I'd be interested in joining a special project team focused on improving company systems and security. Your creative problem-solving skills have not gone unnoticed, he wrote. I accepted, of course. My first suggestion was to redesign the badge system to be more user-friendly while maintaining security. Chen approved it immediately. It's been 6 months since then. I still arrive at work around 9:30 most days, and no one bats an eye. Sometimes I see Blackwood's replacement, Sophia, in the parking garage, and we share a knowing smile. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in my case, it came with an unexpected bonus, a better job. a healthier workplace, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes fighting the system from within is the best way to change it. Oh, and I still have that app on my phone. Just in case. You never know when you might need to clock in from the parking lot again. Clock in at 9 sharp, he said. So I did, just not from where he expected.